who needs no introduction anyway. Jerry Ingersoll, will you please join up on the platform? And Matthew Tejada. And Sandy Scott. That's our first panel. And maybe CJ, would you mind coming up as well so that we can, I saw him 1 second ago. All right. Where are our intrepid leaders? Marie, I wonder if we should start panel number 1. How are we doing on the internet? Okay. Yeah, okay. Hey, CJ. Woo. Hi, guys. Oh, no, you're good. So we're still waiting for the Wi-Fi to connect.
Well,
so we're like opening actor. I wonder, maybe while we're waiting, if folks could share something really cool that you've been inspired by in the last couple days. Maybe.
And the projects.
Yeah.
And the projects of the year.
Yeah. Yeah. Go for it.
That panel last night was amazing. I mean, it was really thought-provoking, powerful.
Awesome. Ooh. Core members of the year went to the White House this morning. Do you want to
Yes,
share
we did.
about that?
Yes, we
Please
did.
share.
You guys are asking this guy to share for the crew, the other people. Okay, well,
Yeah, you start.
oh yeah, it was amazing. Lots of varnish and brass polish, and I was very impressed by that. So, yeah. It was clean, man. They could put gallons on there, dude. So. Yeah, they were all in paintings though, so. I didn't meet anybody, no.
Did you know that HPTC does all the restoration work at the White House?
See, that's what I was thinking about. Like, I was like, who's doing this stuff? So that's good to know. Because yeah, that's exactly like the whole varnishing thing. Yeah, that was. So thank you for actually clarifying that. Because I did that in Rosario and Orcas Island. Like, I was that resort. I was polishing and brass and all that stuff. So it's cool stuff.
Amazing. Amazing. Yeah. Do you want to say that into the microphone?
So what I had mentioned is that, well, the White House, can you hear me? It's okay. So the White House is a National Park Service site, but it's important to note that all the restoration work that is done at the White House is orchestrated through the National Park Service Historic Preservation Training Center, which we have this fantastic multi-service corps program that involves about 4 or 5 different service corps known as the Traditional Trades Advancement Program. So at that White House, they do everything from replacing all the window panes in the White House that where Dolly Madison famously saved the drapes during the War of 1812, to handling and redoing all the back staircases. And that program brings Service Corps members into that to train the next generation of historic preservationists. So hands off to HPTC.
Do any of the other core members of the year want to share about this morning?
I think I said enough for them.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, please do. I don't want to be the only one. I'm just standing here. Yeah, it's okay. We got this. That's not on. I tried.
It's not on?
Oh, it's on.
It is on.
I wasn't speaking loud.
It's on for me. Wow, I'm so tall. You guys will be hearing from me later, but I just wanted to say that I was telling Megan this. Megan's sitting right next to me, and I was telling her that, not like the average American doesn't even like think of even entering into the White House. So like, it's so far from your mind. And when like it's at the forefront of your mind, you don't really know how to process. So I was just going through the rooms. I was like oscillating between like, oh my God, I'm at the White House, and I'm at the White House. And then, right now, I was at the White House. My dream is to be a stand-up comedian, guys, so. But overall, it was beautiful, beautiful artwork and architecture and a library that remains untouched, which is a disservice. But anyway. No, we didn't really, just the Secret Service police. We went through 3 rounds of security. I was so scared. I was like, where do I put my hands? Do I put them in my pocket? No, do not put them in your pocket. I was thinking about, would they let me pet the dog? No, they wouldn't let you pet the dog. But yeah, it was overall a great experience, and I thank the Core Network for the opportunity. So.
All right, here, I'll
Do your thing.
All right. Well, we are gonna thank you for that. That was awesome. So I think we're gonna continue hearing from our amazing core members of the year. And as you all know, this award honors a small group of really exceptional core members from member service and conservation corps who really have exceeded expectations by demonstrating exceptional leadership skills, and a deep and true commitment to civic service. And so I am really, really excited to be introducing one of this year's 5 awardees, CJ. And I want to take the opportunity to congratulate the whole cohort of finalists, as well as all of the Core Member of the Year awardees, just an incredible group of individuals. And CJ is being recognized for his exceptional service as an AmeriCorps member, which is really amazing, coming up on AmeriCorps Week, too, in Conservation Legacy's Stewards Individual Placement Program, as an historic preservation training center, and we just heard some of the amazing work of that program, training center Indian Youth Service Corps intern at Haleakala National Park on the island of Maui. And his focus there has been on trail maintenance and historic preservation, including refurbishment of a historic CCC building that was built in 1936 and used by generations of local families as they've traveled to the Haleakala wilderness. And this work, as I understand it, has involved everything from masonry to carpentry to leading multiple day hitches, 10 to 18 miles deep, with donkey trains carrying equipment. So all kinds of really in-depth, cool experiences. So, with no further ado, I'm excited to hear about your experience and what you're going to share. So I'll turn it straight over to you.
Sorry about being late. I'm still on Hawaii time. 5 hours, if anyone's wondering. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. My name is Christopher Franco, or CJ. It's a lot shorter, and I spell it out, and it's easier for Starbucks, which we have upstairs. I'm with Stewards Individual Placement under Conservation Legacy. My recent term being located in Maui, Hawaii, which I'm from there, so it was really nice to go back. So firstly, I just want to thank everyone for being here to celebrate our core members and our projects of the year. So that's really awesome that everyone's here, and online too, if it's connected, so I don't know the situation. Yeah, before I stepped into the conservation world, I wanted to like be more outdoors, and I would be working in like parks, national parks as a cook, and it was great. I got to serve people, and it was all concessions, so that was nice. But I really wanted to do more for the parks. I even did volunteering, which was, walking sled dogs in Denali. Amazing, too. But after several years of living that life, I was like, I want to veer my sights more towards how to get involved. So I left my cook job in Orcas Island, which is in Washington, if anyone doesn't know, and I drove far east to North Carolina to join my first ever Corps as a crew member with Conservation Corps North Carolina. Yeah, that's okay. You guys can, because that's a great place. So, our crew was deployed to New Jersey for the Hurricane Ida disaster relief operation. I was on the strike team, and it was really heavy stuff, emotional, and we helped communities that were felt like they didn't have anyone there for them. So after some time there was a transition period for the incident command team, and the position of lead logistics coordinator opened up, and it didn't seem like anybody else wanted it. Well, a few people were interested, but there wasn't any, serious people. So I decided to try out being a logistics person, knowing that I move rocks, and I like to move rocks and dig. So it was like, okay, I'll sit on a computer. And that was fun. I guess I did a good job, because they said mission complete. So after my first term in North Carolina, I thought to myself, maybe I could be a crew leader. And beginning 2022, I packed up and headed west to join the Arizona Conservation Corps as a crew lead. As crew leads, thank you, yes. As crew leads, we were provided with a leadership course, and I definitely took that material and ran with it. I wanted to be the best crew lead for my team, and I didn't want to be ahead. I wanted to be right next to them, and so we could all make decisions together. So by the evaluations at the end of my term, my crew and staff, they said I definitely delivered, and that was really nice to hear. For my last term, I got to return home after 16 years away to Maui, Hawaii, to intern at Haleakala National Park. So yeah, under the Individual Stewards Program in the National Park Service, they gave me an opportunity to be certified and proficient in many things, along with mule packing and basic aviation safety. So like being a crew member, doing all those cool things like hooking long lines to helicopters and getting on a helicopter, even wearing a helmet that looks like you're in Spaceballs. So this program helped me to acquire the tools and guidance needed to advance myself towards a career. And it mostly showed me that I could be more for people. So all that being said, I spent shy of a decade making my way to become a National Park Ranger. And with the help of AmeriCorps, Conservation Legacy, a whole lot of support from staff and fellow crew members, as well as my great-grandma for inspiration, and my nephews, this year I finally obtained my goal of being a National Park Ranger. Thank you. And I really just want to shout out to the staff that supported me for my growth, Arizona Conservation Corps, and both Tucson and Flagstaff office, great people there. Conservation Corps North Carolina, amazing people there as well. And everybody in the Stewards Individual Placement Program under Conservation Legacy. They really guided me towards a better future, and I appreciate it. Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
That was wonderful. And I think it's a great lead-in to this panel's conversation about how we can provide more opportunities through the federal government investing in and partnering with core programs so that we can see more success. So I am really thrilled to hear from the amazing leaders on this panel. So I think we'll just go first straight down the line. And George, if you want to kick this off, and just introduce yourself, and then we'll have a couple of questions. And I know we're doing a little bit of time management because of the time here. We want to make sure we can also get to our second panel and also open it up for any questions you might have. So we'll do quick introductions and then talk through a couple questions and then open it up for folks to ask your questions.
Okay, well, great. I'm George McDonald. I'm the National Park Service Chief of Youth Programs and the Experience Services Program Division, and I'm currently on an extended adventure to the Department of Interior Assistant Secretary for Policy Management and Budget, serving as the Acting Department of Interior Youth Programs Coordinator.
Good afternoon. My name is Jerry Ingersoll, and I am the National Director for the Forest Service Job Corps program.
Hey, y'all. My name is Matthew Tejada. I am the Deputy Assistant Administrator for Environmental Justice at EPA.
Hi, everybody. Sandy Scott, Senior Advisor in the Office of the CEO at AmeriCorps. I've been with the agency 28 years. And before that, had a hand in writing the Public Lands Corps Authority on the Hill with Bruce Vento and NASC back in the days. But don't throw anything at me for the match. I was too young. I didn't know anything about match at the time.
All right, so we'll get straight to brass tacks, money. You know, a lot of the federal family have received historic investments for really critical, mission-critical outcomes through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act, and just through investments in regular appropriations. So how are each of you thinking about how to invest more of those dollars in partners who are providing opportunities for Service and Conservation Corps participants? Yeah.
Well, I like the seating arrangement. I get to go first. So, as Secretary of the Interior mentioned last night, Department of Interior is going to spend at least $63 million on Service Corps related work in FY 2023. And that does not include all of our investments that we are planning over the next 3 to 4 fiscal years for Inflation Reduction Act and bipartisan infrastructure law projects. And we're looking at how we spend these dollars in a very intentional and thoughtful manner. So one thing that we're looking at is creating deeper immersion programs similar to pre-apprenticeship style and apprenticeship style programming, so that when the participants are in these programs, they're going to develop vocational skill sets and other skill sets that are going to translate into qualifying experience in either public sector or private sector careers. Not just jobs, but careers. We're also building in to the overall program design livable wages. So $15, $17, $18, $20 an hour are what we're going to be targeting for these programs. Evaluation is also going to be a key component. There's a huge reporting requirement under Inflation Reduction Act and bipartisan infrastructure, but I think that this is an opportunity for us to build those evaluation components so that we understand what the true benefit has been to the participant, to the resource that we are set up to service and support, and then what happens post-program for those participants so that we have that data, and that data can be shared with Congress so that we can ensure that we can continue these levels of funding in future years. Also, our senior leadership at the Department of Interior is committed to creating pathways into federal service. The National Park Service has $500 million in Inflation Reduction Act funding specifically designed to hire people at the park level. So you know what that means to me. It means getting in that room and saying, we need to cut off about 20 to 25% of those dollars and target those for Service Corps participants. And that's what our goal is going to be. And if we can get higher, that'll be even better. And then building out programs that are also going to serve our climate change, climate resiliency, climate restoration goals and priorities, such as developing the Bison Management Apprenticeship Program, looking at programs through Fish and Wildlife Service, through individual placements that are going to create these longer direct hire programs. National Park Service looking at individual placements to embed Corps members with our technical staff around facilities so that they can gain that upper edge in order to get into those positions in the future. And then looking at these areas like arborist training, places where even if you don't get a job in the National Park Service or Fish and Wildlife Service or Bureau of Land Management, you will get a well-paying job in the private sector. And then lastly, look at BLM. That's going to be the future. Bureau of Land Management is going to probably invest more than any other bureau through these special funds. So I expect them to start doubling and tripling what they're doing around youth development work. And I could go on and on, but I'm going to stop there.
All right. Well, you know, I think probably everybody knows about the wildfire crisis, the wildfire emergency that we are looking at across the country. And there's a real emergency in our need to treat land on a greater scale than we've ever done before. This is also, though, a tremendous opportunity. As Deputy Undersecretary Harrell said, we have more money available to invest in this work now than we have had in my 36-year career with the Forest Service. And right now, the limiting factor is often our ability to get that work done, to respond to the crisis, to respond to the congressional interest in investing that money wisely and in getting the work done on the ground. We cannot do that alone. We cannot even begin to do that alone. It is a work that we engage in together as partners. In Forest Service Job Corps, we're investing in conservation trades, in training the next generation of conservation stewards, in training underserved youth for better jobs. We want to place them in the Forest Service, and that is long-term work. Right now, today, the Forest Service doesn't have enough trained folks to fill our positions, and even if we did, we wouldn't have the capacity to do all the work that the land demands and that the resources have. So this is a work of partnership, and we are looking for a collective effort to address this work, to serve the young people, to ultimately care for the land and to treat the land so that we can sustain our mission and the lands with which we're entrusted over the long term.
So I want to lift up some of the things that were shared by my colleagues before me, but I have to start from a place of probably acknowledging that not many of y'all know what we do at EPA, because we haven't had a lot of partnerships with many of the corps for a long time. So from my position running the EJ program, and I'm a career official, I've been running the EJ program for 10 years at EPA. This is an incredible opportunity. I'd say it's a historic opportunity. I'm actually a historian by training, and I think we're actually living in a historic time in our society right now where we have never had in any administration the clear mandate to not just talk about, but acknowledge and connect what we do in government in the United States to histories of inequities and injustice that have faced communities of color, rural communities, low-income communities, and indigenous communities across the United States, to really start to connect our mission and lift up not just the opportunity, but our responsibility to advance equity and justice through everything that we do in the government. And that's happening at a time when we have historic resources. The only time that's ever going to happen in our lives, Hasn't happened in any of your lives. I'm looking around. I see other gray hairs in here. Hasn't happened in your lives. It's not going to happen in our lives again that I'm going to count on. We have this confluence of these things happening right now. And so many of us, like at the EJ program at EPA that I used to apply to, I used to run a community-based EJ organization in Houston, Texas that worked in and around the Houston Ship Channel. I never got one of the grants I give out now. Because there's such a capacity lack, right? And for so long in the 10 years that I've been at EPA, I scrimped and saved and we cut down all of our budgets to be able to make $1 million a year grant program work. $1 million a year, and we were the biggest EJ grant in the United States. $1 million a year. The next 3.5 years, I have to spend $3.5 billion. All at once. All at once. So a couple things that we're trying to do with that, like George was saying, right? The evaluation, the data, proving to the folks on the Hill, proving to folks across the United States, to local mayors, to tribal leaders, that using taxpayer dollars in these ways is not just a good thing to do, it's actually the best thing to do. And especially for many of the communities in the United States that have dealt for generations with these legacy issues of being dumped on and disinvested in, it's the only way we're actually going to make progress in those communities is by investing in the communities and investing from the bottom up. That's what we're trying to do with our money, is invest from the bottom up, while so many other things are trying to come from the top down. We want to build from the bottom up, but we've never had the opportunity to do it. Right? We've never had this much money to go to communities like we do right now. And the communities aren't ready for it. So we're trying to create a holistic community support program at EPA right now. We have multiple competitions out on the street to provide technical assistance and grant resources to meet the community wherever they're at their needs, right? If they're just starting out, they just need $100,000 and a little bit of technical assistance to write their first grant, we're going to have that for them. If they're ready for a $20 million implementation grant and they want to buy property and put in solar or put in natural resource access or whatever else they need in the community, we're going to pay for that too. And we're going to provide them the technical assistance to go in there and do the reporting and do the tracking and do the evaluation so we can lift them up as a really great investment of taxpayer dollars. One of the biggest things, though, in all these communities that I know many folks in this room can share, though, is that people don't have a body to do the work, right? Tribes, rural local governments, those community-based organizations that are working with volunteers, they don't have somebody to learn how to write a grant and to be there long enough to write the grant and then to be there to implement the grant and take pictures and make a video and show the world how powerful that work is. We need to find a way to invest in people across the United States. And we don't do that at EPA. That's never been part of our job, right? So I'm really looking forward in this era of partnerships, as just was shared. We need y'all's help in figuring out a solution for that need and figuring out how we can spend our $3.5 billion, whether it's through actually getting bodies out on the ground or those bodies connecting to the tens of millions of dollars of grants that we're going to provide to communities to do the most awesome work in the United States. We need help in doing that. We need your partnership, and we need to figure out how to do this right now and make it work this year.
You've come to the right place, Matt. This is the group. So as everyone knows, we got extremely close to what would have been a completely historic, game-changing investment of $30 billion for Civilian Climate Corps, including $15 billion for AmeriCorps. And it would have funded 300,000 Corps members. We're grateful to the White House, to our federal partners, to the Corps Network, to all of you who made the case for that and worked very hard on that for a long, long time. So after that didn't pass, we gnashed our teeth and maybe wailed a little bit and a little therapy. But then we did what you do, and we got up and we said, okay, where do we go? And we rolled up our sleeves, and we're finding other ways to support this work. AmeriCorps, as you heard Michael last night, we last year invested $117 million into environmental and conservation corps. That's a 20% increase over the previous year. Most of that is for conservation corps, the people in this room. And that was going to fund both increasing living allowances, also expanding service opportunities, which is about 15,000 per year right now we have in environmental stewardship, conservation, climate. And then just now, it's now past 12:30, so I can talk about the budget. The president's budget just came out, and the FY24, $1.47 billion for AmeriCorps, In state and national, that's an increase of $93 million. This is going to allow us to support a $13 an hour minimum living allowance, and it includes proposals that we've been wanting for a long, long time. Eliminate the tax on the AmeriCorps Education Award. Whoa! Yes. Popular, especially with the alums in the room. I know that. There's more. Extend non-competitive eligibility to all full-time AmeriCorps members. So right now it's only Vista. Why not State National? Why not NCCC? Allow individual with DACA status to serve in AmeriCorps. All right. And also to remove the drug conviction bar on dispersing an education award. So these are proposals, so people need to make sure they happen. But we're really excited with these, worked hard, and the administration is in the budget, supportive of all of those proposals. And there's more. It's on our website now, you can take a look. Just really quickly, some of the ways, back to your question, what we're doing differently because of funding. We've prioritized climate change and workforce development in our strategic plans and our funding notices. Equity, increasing the living allowance. We've increased it 3 times already. It's going to happen again. We're going to be at 13. We want to get to 15. That's what President Biden asked at the summit in September. He told Congress we want to get to $15 an hour by FY25. We are expanding our workforce pathways emphasis, and most importantly, we're working with our colleagues, with the other federal agencies. We never stopped meeting and talking, and we're on our speed dials, George and Merlene and Shannon and everybody. We're talking about what we can do by working together to build this in the way that was originally designed, but that didn't happen through the legislative process, because everything is here, just like Matthew said, there's never been this amount of resources at this time, and the need and the desire for young people who want to serve, all the ingredients are there. We just got to bake the cake.
Awesome. Well, I think that's a great entree to the next question, which is that we do have these historic resources. And Matthew, maybe we'll start with you because you touched on this, and then go back around this way. But how are we making sure that we're breaking down barriers to equitable access to those resources, and we're streamlining process and making it easier for everyone to have a shot at whether it's a grant or a partnership agreement or a project proposal? How are we creating equitable access to those investments?
Yeah, there's a few things we're trying to do at EPA for that, and it starts with, one, just the way that the funds we received, the $3 billion in Inflation Reduction Act we received at EPA, it has to go to a community-based organization, and the only way a tribe or a local government or an academic institution can access any of those $3 billion is if they are partnered with a community-based organization, which is so powerful, right? Because the big thing in those relationships is power. And I remember in Houston, during the Obama administration, there were a lot of these great initiatives, but they didn't put that power dynamic thing in play. And so I wrote lots of letters of interest when I was when I was running an organization in Houston that got a lot of other people money. And it was funny how about a week before that check arrived, I stopped getting phone calls. Because the community-based organization didn't have to be a partner for it, right? We just had to show that we would like it very much. So that is a dynamic that's changing, and at least the money that we're giving out. The community-based organization has got to be a partner, and we're going to put the terms in there to make sure that it is a primary partner, even if they're not the main spender of the money, that they get to call the shot on where that money goes. So it has to be driven by that community. Some of the other things we're doing, one of the things that has been in the EJ movement for a long time as a need and has never been resourced, and we started putting this together even before the Inflation Reduction Act happened, is a need for just basic capacity building for communities, right? If they need to incorporate their C3, or if it's the local government or the tribal government just doesn't really understand how to engage their impacted community in a way so they can start to build a relationship, or they need to write their first grant, right? They need that basic capacity building. And they need also the help to, once they get a little bit of momentum going, to look up at the federal government and think, okay, where do I go now? Right? Because the federal government is a mess. And we put the burden of that mess on people to figure out, which is unfair, right? That is the height of injustice, that we're like, we can't get ourselves organized, but y'all have good luck, right? So we're creating technical assistance centers across the United States. We're calling them EJ, Thriving Community Technical Assistance Centers. And I'm hoping to God that Tic Tac doesn't sue us, because that's what we're calling them, EJ Tic Tacs, across the United States. But they're going to provide that ground floor, front door support to communities and their partners, like local governments, utilities, and tribes, for them to come in free of charge. All you got to do is call, I need help. What can I help you with, right? Where can I shoot you off to? Oh, you're talking about a waste issue. Well, let's get you into this more specific form of assistance. Let's get you one of these grants. Oh, you're talking about transit. Oh, you're talking about access to natural resources. Let's look across the federal family, and let's actually not just give you a brochure, but let's take you hand in hand and go talk to USDA, go talk to DOI, go hook you up with HUD, right? And get you the assistance that you need. So that's one way that we're trying to do it, is actually getting that technical assistance out on the ground is one of the first things. We're going to announce them later this month. The administrator is really excited about it. And we're working in partnership with a number of other agencies on actually standing up these EJ Tic Tacs across the federal family. Something else that we're doing, and it's our own capacity constraint, but also constraint of communities, and going back to the fact that I never got one of the own grants that I hand out now, is it's really hard, right? It is really hard to get federal money. And when somebody's looking to get just $100,000 or $250,000 from us, making them go through that federal application and acquisition system is really unfair too. It's really unfair. So what we're going to do is, and this is out for competition right now, it's the first time we're doing it. We're having to do all these things all at the first time because we have to spend all of this money by September 30th, 2026, is we're actually going to set up a system of grant makers across the United States. And we're going to give them a really big check for them to turn around and sub-grant that money out at a much higher rate with a much lower barrier to entry for communities to come in and get the $100,000 to do the assessment, get the $500,000 to do, or actually I think we capped at $350,000 to do the project development or the planning. And we're going to couple that with technical assistance. And then later this summer, and what we're actually designing right now, and we have a request for information that's open to the public, is we'll release our big implementation grant. It's the first time we're actually going to be able to fund community and community-based partnerships to actually do implementation projects on the ground for their communities. And we don't want to pay for stuff that other government agencies should be paying for. I don't want to pay for lead pipes to be pulled out of the ground because we have lead pipe money somewhere else, right? I don't want to pay for somebody to build a transit facility because DOT's got transit facility money right now. But for communities, especially indigenous communities, rural communities, communities of color across the United States, there's always a gap. There's always that $5 million of, oh, if we could just buy that property, right? Or if we could just put that deal together, then hundreds of millions of dollars would start flowing in. That's the thing that we want to fund, right? But it's still really hard to do that. So some of the innovative things that we're going to do in this to both make it easier and also make sure we're giving these funds to authentic community-driven organizations on the ground is we're going to have a year-long application window. No more of this apply by September 29th and hold your breath, right? A year-long application window that we'll be scoring on a regular basis. And we're going to do a simplified initial paper application. And then we're going to invite folks in to actually have a conversation with us. We're going to have an oral application. So we can actually talk to the community members, right? Not the professional grant writer that some slick operation hired for whatever they want to do, but actually talk to the community members about, hey, is this real? Is this for real? Right? Is that partnership for real? Is that an authentic thing you got going on over there? Have you thought about the reporting element of this? Have you thought about the storytelling? Are you sure you're going to be able to make this deal happen so that we actually get to engage directly with the folks that we want to fund before we award them? So those are some of the things we're trying to do to actually get this money out in an equitable way across the United States.
That's awesome, and USDA and the Forest Service team will be calling you to follow up on some of that really cool innovation. Sandy, do you want to go next?
Sure, I'll be fast. So the question about how do we investing in partner capacity, I mean, I think all AmeriCorps grants invest in partner capacity. That's kind of what they do. They're to perform work, but sort of unlike Public Lands Corps, which is more project focused, AmeriCorps funds Corps members and it funds staff, and so all of that's capacity. We also have been doing more planning grants. I hope folks have seen those. That's a great opportunity if you want to explore. It's enough funds for you to take a period of time, a year, to see how you can better use or more use AmeriCorps. We're obviously funding our state commissions. We've increased our funding state service commissions, including our commission investment funds, which allows them to do more planning and support and outreach. Outreach is really important. We want to make sure that communities that aren't involved know about the opportunities. We're also fixing our IT and getting rid of e-grants and making, There you go. I knew that would be popular. And investing in recruitment too, which is something we've underinvested in some things, and we're now finally doing that. And then again, working with the federal government has incredible expertise and resources, and it's like sprinkled all around. Let's get together, figure out how NOAA can share information with you guys, or whatever it is. There's a lot of things we can do, and so that's what we're also looking at.
The Forest Service's contributions to USDA's Equity Action Plan and Equity Action implementation it's multifaceted. And, I got to start with, we are taking significant steps towards co-management, towards redeeming our trust responsibility to tribal governments, toward recognizing the historic tie of our tribes to these lands that we now share in the management of with them, ensuring that the funds that come to the Forest Service for managing these lands are first looked at through how we can share that work with the folks who've been managing these lands for far longer than we have. Through our grants and agreements, through our contracts, and through our hiring, we're connecting all of those to an equity strategy. We need to ensure that our contracts are going out to small businesses, going out to tribal governments, going out to partners who can work with us to advance not only the work on the ground, but also the care for the communities. Through our grants and agreements, again, we need to look at that with an equity lens and invest in partners who can share with all the communities of the American people. And then through our hiring, we need to become an agency that looks like the people we serve. Forest Service Job Corps, by statute, all of the students we serve are impoverished, are underserved, because that's the qualification to get into Job Corps. And so our investments from USDA and the Forest Service to increasing opportunities for those students to launch conservation careers are a part of our equity action strategy. Long way to go, and I think with these resources, with this administration's focus, we are taking those steps.
Thanks, Jerry. And George, why don't you close us out for this question, and then we are going to jettison the last question in favor of a couple of questions from you all, and then we'll go to our next panel.
So since this is Women's History Month, I would just want to acknowledge Meryl, Mary Ellen, and Julie Rodriguez for setting the stage for where we're at by the work that you did in 2009 and 2010 with establishing the Federal Advisory Committee, which led to the foundation that's gotten us here, where we have unprecedented resources for service corps. So thank you. So I've told you about this extended adventure to the Department of Interior. So one of the things that I was asked to do, and I have a weekly meeting on this with the Deputy Chief of Staff to the Secretary, and it's primarily about how do we remove unnecessary bureaucratic red tape and barriers to us getting this work done. And that is a weekly meeting that I have where I come with a laundry list of all of this stuff, and then we try to figure out solutions for making sure that our partners can help service and help us achieve these shared goals, especially around the priority goals around climate change mitigation, resiliency, and ecosystem restoration. And all wrapped around this is a extremely strong diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility bow around everything that we do in this work. And part of that is looking at how we design our programs. So in addition to having this funding, we're also looking at ways to embed capacity building for our Service Corps partners, to help you with recruitment, to help you with training, to give you enough flexibility in the agreements that you have to actually execute on the work. But I think another piece that has happened over the last 2 years, which is in the 20-plus years that I've been in the federal government, I've never seen the level of cross-agency pollination. So another great woman in this, Merlene Mazik, who leads the interagency working group, where we meet for 90 minutes every other week to talk about how we can leverage our resources, share best practices, and then we then go back to Sandy and say, Sandy, put all of this stuff in some legislative packages so we can make it happen. But this is also getting those best practices and that cross-pollination is also leading us to figure out ways where we can leverage each of our agencies' resources into combining those to push out to our partners so that you have even more resources to do your work. And then also looking at the philanthropic community. So we're now coming with a lot of skin in the game, but it's organized skin in the game, that we are utilizing all the great work that our partners have done, but then saying, hey, philanthropic community, you have these priorities, we can actually get this done. And I always like to utilize the Service Corps community because oftentimes we have these lofty goals about what we want to do, and oftentimes we spend a lot of money on planning and meetings and talking about stuff. But the people in this room are what we would call up in New York the get it done crew. And you all make it happen, and we can turn pots of money into tangible resources. And I think that this $3 billion that the Environmental Protection Agency has through these grants going out to communities, I mean, this is transformational work, and we will help you to spend every dime of that over the next 3 years. But more importantly, putting in strong roots that build the capacity, so once that money has been already exhausted, the community organizations can stand on themselves and they have enough infrastructure to save our planet, make sure that all people are involved in the green movement, the environmental justice and social justice movement, and we have healthier communities, and we also have communities that are diverse and inclusive where people get along around shared green space. And I think that that's what all of our work is supposed to be about. So I just want to thank everybody and just say that the next 3 years are going to be some of the most transformational years in this movement and potentially putting a stamp on this country that it's never seen before. So thank you, Merle.
That's awesome. I think maybe could we take 2 questions from folks for this panel?
Hi, I'm Greg Markle from Operation Fresh Start in Madison, Wisconsin. And I'm hearing some wonderful things, but I'm also seeing a gap. The representation which isn't up there is Department of Labor. And you speak of the workforce angle of it, and you speak of environmental justice and the community-based organizations involved in that environmental justice. But how are you engaging the urban employee development edge of this to make all of this work happen, because you're going to need the people, and those people are going to come oftentimes from diverse urban centers. And how do you engage that in this process and make that an endemic part of everything you're doing?
This isn't the whole answer to that, but of course, Forest Service Job Corps is a partnership between USDA and Department of Labor. And all of our funding, my salary, is paid for through Department of Labor. And the students that we recruit to Job Corps are coming to us from those urban environments where Job Corps is known as an opportunity for completing your education, for getting trade training, and for going out into good careers and good jobs. The Forest Service angle to that is making sure that those students have the opportunity to go into conservation. And so many of our students come to us from an urban area. They joined Job Corps for the purposes of getting a good job, but once they get exposed to conservation, we give them that opportunity as well. Department of Labor is a strong partner right now in the civilian conservation centers run by Job Corps, and I think there's at least one representative here in the room today.
And I'd also like to add that on the interior side, we just got approval for our very first apprenticeship program that's been recognized by the Department of Labor. And this is a real estate appraisal apprenticeship program that's going to really help us with filling a void that we have in our workforce, where we're about 35% below the necessary staffing levels. Also, the Bison Management Apprenticeship Program, the Traditional Trades Advancement Program, our Arborist Apprenticeship Program, we are all going to be working with the Department of Labor to get recognition for those positions, so that there is actual a certificate and recognition. So when Corps members participate in it, they complete the work, even if they don't get hired into the federal service, they can use this training, and it's recognized in, throughout industry, private sector industry. And so I actually have almost weekly calls with various people with Department of Labor, and they've been extremely helpful with helping us to design these programs.
And for us in the Inflation Reduction Act, that was one of the things we were most excited about, is Congress put that word professional development in there for us. It's the first time we've been able to play in that game. So we'd had a relationship with DOL before, but we'd never really had a reason to do business with them. So we are doing that now. We don't know exactly what it's going to look like, because our money's pretty flexible. Our money is actually mysteriously has turned into some of the most flexible money in the government right now. But the thing is, the great thing is that I don't really have to know how it's going to get spent. I have to make sure it is available to be spent in as flexible a way as possible, so that the community can figure out how they want it spent. And so this is the first time we're ever going to be able to give $10, $20 million grants to communities, to EJ communities, who are saying, this is the workforce training we need, and we're going to get the $10 million to set it up in our community. So those answers are out there, and I'm excited to finally be able to start funding them, and to do that in partnership with DOL, so that all these other workforce training projects that are out there can really learn from, oh, this is what the community needed this whole time. Let's start doing it that way.
And just really quick, we are also in touch with DOL. We have a colleague in the back, Joey, who's on detail with us from the Department of Labor. Workforce development has always been part of AmeriCorps. It's been, it's happened. AmeriCorps is a pathway to opportunity and jobs. We're doing more to highlight that, and I think that and you guys are the ones actually doing it. So you're showing how you're developing pre-apprenticeships. You're developing certifications. So part of what we want to do is help share that information along with Core Network, but also in ways that we can be helpful. Labor also didn't get funding like us from IRA or BIL, but because of some of their existing work and mission, they're a great partner for this. And this is the green jobs of the future are coming, and cores have a super important role in preparing for it. So. I think through all of those different sources, we can help to do that.
Yeah, and I'll just also highlight that DOL has been a great partner for years, really leading out on back from the 21st Century Conservation Service Corps, and is a key part of this partnership. And I know there's some folks here today, and also last year we're on a panel, so really appreciate you highlighting that important role, and also the importance of really being able to focus in on local workforce development as a key partner to all of us as we're looking to expand accessibility to these programs and to the career pathways that can result from the program. So really great point to highlight and for us to be integrating into our work together. So I think we are going to transition to the next panel. So, yeah, please.
About workforce training, so we're hiring.
We're hiring too.
We are too. We have multiple opportunities on the street. Forest Service multiple opportunities on the street. On March 21st, we will be hiring the largest ever opportunity to join the civilian workforce and be an environmental justice specialist in the history of the government. It'll be open to all locations across the United States, all regional offices, headquarters offices. It'll be entry level, really broad, and to one of the things that I think George said earlier, I'm really proud that when I was hired 10 years ago to run the EJ program, and to this day, I think it's one of the most diverse and exciting outfits in the federal government. But this is our first chance to really make it the next generation of leaders for the federal government by hiring hundreds of people to come into civil service and do environmental justice. And my main priority is making sure that we hire folks from the communities we serve. The folks that grew up in equity and justice, the folks that work and fight for equity and justice, and now is the time to do that. And we need everyone's help to make sure we get those folks applying to these jobs and coming into the government to change the way that the government governs.
All right, thank you to each of you. Really appreciate all your leadership. Amazing. Okay, we're doing slight adjustments to our agenda here, so to make sure that we can get everyone up. So let's pull folks up really quickly. Michael, Shannon, Mackenzie, Ernestine, and Merlene. Okay. All right, and anyone who needs to stand up and stretch should feel free to do that. Take care of yourself in these sessions. So we are going to do a similar model for the panel. We're going to do a quick round of introductions, just name and role and what you're doing. And then we had a couple questions. I think we're going to maybe try and be really brief. We'll do maybe one or two of those. And maybe we'll try and combine them, and then we'll make sure that we open it up so that folks can engage in the dialogue and ask any questions you might have. So let's start straight down with introductions.
All right, Michael Brown. I serve as the Bureau of Land Management National Youth Program Lead.
Thank you. We're helping one another. This is how we do it. So good morning, good afternoon to everyone. My name is Shannon Smith. I'm with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I work in the National Wildlife Refuge System, and my title is Connected Communities Coordinator. And basically, I work with all of the national leads who are responsible for our urban program, our youth, our friends, and our volunteer programs. And I do that all through the lens of justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility.
Hi, that's a really big job, Shannon. Hi, I'm Merlene Mazik, and I'm at the Forest Service leading out on our Workforce Development Partnership Service Hub and coordinating our Civilian Climate Corps efforts even without the funding. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Ernestine White. I'm the National Youth Employment Programs Coordinator with the Youth Programs Division for the National Park Service. And through our work, we're engaging over 8,000 youth in service corps. So I would say service corps members are about 4,000 annually. So thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mackenzie Neal, and I'm coming from the U.S. Bureau of Indian Affairs. I am currently working within the Division of Workforce and Youth Development, and I'm the Pathways Internship Program Manager. And also, by chance and luck, I am standing up the Indian Youth Service Corps for the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to take a stab at combining all three of the questions that we had. So, you know, we heard from the great panel that preceded you about the historic opportunity to really scale up this work. So, but we know that this isn't just about getting projects done, right? This is about the transformational experience that participants have through these programs. So, you know, the two-part question here is, one, how are we investing in that holistic experience of the participants, making sure that we're meeting all of the needs and creating really supportive opportunities? And then the part two of that is, how are we connecting that really intentionally to career pathways so that this isn't just a moment of opportunity, it's a lifetime of opportunity?
All right, I guess I can start off tackling that, and I'll be brief in my comments, because there's a mic that I never did, you know, I like all mics, so I will be brief here. But thank you for the timely question, first of all. The last time I had an opportunity to address this audience, it was about a year ago. It was the Climate Action Summit, actually in this room on this stage. At that point in time, the big deal was the BBB, the Build Back Better legislation, and how we were going to utilize that to leverage our youth programs. So with that being said, that really put the fire under the Bureau of Land Management in terms of how will we deal with this large funding source in the fact that we don't have the capacity, we don't have the total infrastructure and so forth. So with all that being said, I mean, we really benefited from the Build Back Better in that, even though it didn't cross the line, but it helped us put together a comprehensive CCC implementation plan. In order to put that implementation plan together, we had to work across directorates, we had to work across programs, we had to work across divisions, and also we coordinated this effort with the other federal land management agencies. So that's why you hear George McDonald talking about watch out for the Bureau of Land Management, because we do have our plan in place. So a good plan with funding through the infrastructure law, I mean, we're ready to rock and roll. So with all that being said, the BLM intends to invest heavily into the youth program to advance restoration, monitoring, community engagement, and so forth. So George was shooting for 25% for the National Park Service. We shot for 15%, and you know what? We got it. And you think about 15% is not that much, but you're talking about hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. We're ready to rock and roll, you guys. Yeah. And with that being said, one of the major challenges that we're having with the Bureau of Land Management, and I think this is pretty consistent across other federal land management agencies as well, is one, capacity, two, housing, recruitment, all of those things we always talk about. But what's really the challenge is the cooperative agreements. And we're working on that. And by God, with the Bureau of Land Management, we have our first national agreement that's in place, and we're ready to go with that. In addition to that, we have a number of state agreements as well. So we'll be able to get these projects up and running on the ground pretty quickly. So with all that being said, one of the things that gets lost quite often in the conversation when we talk about youth corps, particularly at the headquarters level within the Bureau of Land Management, but is the youth program is an education program. And we want to provide opportunities. We want to provide a professional ladder to launch careers. And particularly those communities, those gateway communities, the underserved, underrepresented communities, we're going to target those hard. In addition to that, we're going to launch our IYSC, the Indian Youth Service Corps initiative, and we'll be working with tribal nations. So we have a whole lot going on. So you're going to hear a lot from the Bureau of Land Management.
So to your question, for as far as what the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is doing and you know, kind of piggybacking on the topic of those cooperative agreements, we too share that pain of, you know, the difficulty of cooperative agreements and putting them in place. However, we are moving towards more national agreements like you all are, where we're taking some of the burden off of the field stations and the regions and taking that load on, and we can be a little bit more efficient in that way, and we can also do things like making sure that those agreements include things like living wage, which is like the minimum of $15 an hour, again, minimum. And then providing things like housing stipends that are not just a pittance, but actually like stipends that'll help you pay your real rent, like, you know, to the tune of, you know, $1,200 and $1,400 a month for those living stipends. And then also providing other types of stipends for travel, for training, professional development, and our agreements include things like now, like coaching and mentoring, and then helping folks navigate the world of USA Jobs, because I think that is a monster of a program and a process. And so we're like digging in and like, you know, like looking at transcripts, looking at what you have and what you're missing, and as it relates to the actual jobs that you're going to be applying for, and understanding what those gaps are, and helping to work with people to get them the skills that they need to qualify for certain types of job series. The other thing that we're doing in terms of breaking down barriers is really assessing what those job series look like. For the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, we have some pretty unique job series that have some pretty stringent requirements, like our 485 Wildlife Management series that really gets people to a place where they don't have all the requirements, and that is making us lose out on really qualified and talented folks by the way we are describing our job series. And so we're working on changing the requirements. I know folks, you know, they're lacking like a certain number of units of botany, and if you didn't go to a wildlife school, you're probably not going to have that with as much you could even have a PhD, but if you don't have 9 units of botany, you're going to miss out on an opportunity. So it's silly. So what else are we doing? And in terms of like long-term efforts, we're piloting an effort called the Maintenance and Infrastructure Fellowship Program, where some of my colleagues that have worked in the Division of Infrastructure Management are recognizing the fact that we need to be thinking about how we do these programs and offer things from the recruitment stage all the way through retirement. And so we're not just thinking about onboarding and getting you on and keeping you on, but what is it that you need throughout the life of your career? So it's not just thinking about the beginning, but we're already looking towards the end and helping folks get to what that looks like. And we're also not leaving behind those individuals that have been in those positions for a very long time. We're offering all this cool new stuff. And the folks that have been in the jobs that they have been in for many years are like, yo, I did not get that same opportunity. And so we're not leaving them behind either. We're thinking about ways to lift them up, give them opportunities for more compensation so that they can be a mentor to the people that are coming on board, because we have a huge succession planning void that we're walking right into, and we need to be ready for that. So that's a couple of the things that we're doing.
So I'm not going to repeat what my colleagues Michael and Shannon said, because we're doing all of those things as well. But I will reinforce and reiterate a couple things. First, Matthew said something that was really important, that we are living through some really historical times, precedent-setting times. I can't think of a better time to be alive. It's hard work, but it's such energizing work, because we are creating change that will be felt for decades and decades to come. And this is why every day I get up and I come into work and I'm with Merle and others and George and all of them. It's exciting. So with that said, we are not doing business as usual. And that is what all of this is about. It's about changing the paradigm of how we work with you all, how we work with inside our agencies, and how we work with others who can support this work. Last year at the summit, we had a lot of people from the corporate sector and the foundation sector. You know, the gentleman who noted that DOL wasn't on the table, that was an oversight on our part. That should not have happened. And we need to make sure they're at the table every time we convene this group. That is what I mean by we're not doing business as usual. I think that what we are doing different is we're fixing the legislation that Sandy and his folks didn't get right the first time. And, but so appreciative of them putting that legislation in place and that we have something that we can fix. And so we need your help to do that. Farm Bill 2023 is going to allow us and you all to make sure you're reaching out to your legislators. And I'm just going to be real careful, that's what I say here, but that there are some things that can make that act a lot more inclusive. And right now, it is not inclusive as it needs to be. And we are leading out on that effort. We are taking programs that we've incubated, like the Resource Assistance Program that Sylvia is helping us lead now, and several other people at that table have helped us put in place, including, you know, Kristen and Kiana and others. We're learning lessons from how we manage that program because we own it and we are controlling that, and we are pulling out best practices that we are going to replicate for Public Lands Corps program engagement. We are being creative, and we are not afraid, you know, to push the limits and to take some risks so that we can build the programs that are going to be responsive to the requirements that you have. Minimum standards of engagement, absolutely, and some of them you may not agree with, but we want you to help us figure out how we can make those standards work for everyone. Urban core partnerships, working with our state and private forestry partners to make sure that they're providing those opportunities with those billions of dollars they got through infrastructure and IRA in ways that we have not done before. So for those of you who run urban cores and you have not been partnering with the Forest Service, right now is the time for you to be partnering with the Forest Service. And if you aren't talking to our people in state and private forestry, then you need to let me know that so I can make sure that you do have a chance to talk with them. So I'm going to stop because I want to make sure other people get a chance to talk. But I'm really excited to be here. And if there's something that we should do differently and that is detrimental to how you are implementing your programs, then if I don't know that yet, shame on you.
So I would just say that we see partnerships like the ones that we have with CORES as a way to help us to build bridges into communities that we are not engaging. We see partnerships as, I would say, another tool to help us to reach our diversity, equity, and inclusion goals. The National Park Service has been gearing up for these funding opportunities. And one thing that we've been doing is working in collaboration, as you've heard throughout this conference, with the Core Network and the National Park Foundation to do scoping projects, to identify appropriate projects that service corps can execute. And I think for 2023, we've identified over $5 million worth of projects and have a goal of having our 2024 project list available in 2024. So many of you have already heard that. And I would just add, in terms of some key ingredients, as we can't go into how to develop program models, but I wanted to mention that, again, just echoing the one thing, that these are training development programs. And so I think that's really critical to say, and that they should have a living wage. And right now we're looking at, again, I know I'm beating the drum, a minimum of $15 an hour. And I really want to touch on this. As the program participants complete their service, we really want them to walk away with their Public Land Corps certification. We spend so much time trying to find those certificates for them when they see a job announcement, and we're really not doing a service to the participants. We are, with the National Park Service, doing a great job with our direct hire resource assistance. We have a system in place that's working well. But we engage more youth through public land corps than we do with our other programs, yet we are not taking advantage of the talent that's coming through these programs, and we're doing a disservice to them and to ourselves when we don't make sure they're equipped with the tools they need when they leave us. We want to support them when they're in the program, helping them to be successful, but we also want to support them so they have the tools that they need so they can be building their careers. We don't see this as a one and done 12-week relationship. We are here to support you throughout. I think our public land corps, that is a 2-year. We shouldn't be done with them like it's a sales thing in 11, 12 weeks. I mean, we need to continue to support people to help them build success after they leave the programs, making sure they walk away with a resume. They have their certificates, they're equipped and ready to go when there's a job announcement out there that they're interested in. So I'll stop there.
And finally, for the BIA Office of Trust Services, when we're looking at corps and standing up our first Indian Youth Service Corps program, we're thinking about how these programs can be of service in the context of the federal trust responsibility. Many of you are aware of that trust responsibility, but those of you who aren't, I encourage you to educate yourself on it, because the nation-to-nation relationship between tribal nations and our federal government is incredibly important to respect, especially if you are working on tribal lands within tribal spaces. So, you know, trust responsibility isn't just land management, it's also cultural resource management. And so the projects that we're looking at and so excited about are tying in natural resource management and training and skill development with language revitalization, elder engagement, traditional stories and ecological knowledge, incorporating traditional ecological knowledge in day-to-day instruction for youth participants. With all that in mind, we're really excited about that holistic word that you just used. We want our program to take into context the immensely different lifestyles and lifeways of Indigenous peoples across this country, whether it is food subsistence, whether it's food sovereignty. There are an infinite amount of programs and opportunities for corps to participate in these really important work, especially because, you know, our elders are getting older. My tribe's language, unfortunately, the last full speaker passed away recently. So the timing is incredibly important for these programs to be funded, especially since we have these incredible opportunities. George mentioned the Bison Apprenticeship Program. Love it. I'm so excited for it. I have $100,000 to spend for Bison. I have $2 million to spend. Me, I'm making the decision. It's crazy. I have $2 million to spend on these Indian Youth Service Corps projects, and I hope that BIA in the future can help your corps connect with local tribal communities. I know it's overwhelming. I know if you don't have tribal friends, you don't know where to make that connection. That's where your local BIA agencies can play a role in helping you with this. Also, BIA can deliver money straight to tribes. That is very unique. We have a lot of funding mechanisms that the other agencies don't necessarily have access to. With that in mind, we're really eager to have tribes be the ones at the steering wheel and building these partnerships and relationships, and we can connect you with the tribes. And I will do my very best to make sure that happens. Finally, for the workforce development piece, we want IYSC to be as well known as the YMCA. That's the goal for the future. I want every tribal community to have some kind of core. I want them to be able to have parallel hiring with the Pathways internship program and make it more of a collective, cross-pollinized set of youth development programs. That's our goal. That's what we're trying to do, and I know that we're working very closely with other agencies. And George has been a fantastic mentor in introducing me to all these awesome people. This marks like my 1 year in the federal government, and the first week of my job, I came to the Climate Change Core Network Summit last year. I was terrified, and now I'm here. So suffice to say, having more Indigenous youth involved in federal government is incredibly important, but if we don't hire them, their tribes will. So please keep that in mind, that you're not just serving the federal government and federal agencies or state agencies, you are preparing an Indigenous workforce that can enter careers with their tribes. So thank you very much.
thank you for all of the things that you each just shared. I have been taking a lot of notes in both panels, so lots of things to follow up on. I wish we had more time for this. Do we have time for one question? Or no? Half of one. Marie, do you want to do the half a question? And also, I want to celebrate your leadership as well.
Thank you. So, yeah, I do have a half. How can we, as cores, how can we connect the dots? How do we string all these dots together? How can we do, we can work with BLM, we can work with FISH, we can work with Forest Service. How do we weave that together to make the strongest link possible? How do we do that?
Okay, first of all, we communicate, believe it or not, on a weekly basis. So these folks up here are no strangers. Folks down here are no strangers. So we talk all the time. So my advice would be just to reach out to any of these agencies to get the word out, and we do talk a number of times throughout the week on top of these particular topics.
Okay. Danielle and Mary Ellen are going to shoot me, so I may be looking for a job.
Uh-huh.
But could one of us be part of your meeting, since you talk on a regular basis, that could help us kind of connect?
Most certainly, without question.
Okay, Danielle will be at your next.
Or maybe we can come to your PLSC meetings and have a delegate, a representative from our team, and maybe revolve it to represent the federal interests at those meetings.
Okay, all right, but yeah, we just need to somehow connect us, I think.
We would love to do that. And I just wanted to note also that, and this goes back to the Forest Service, right now we're in the process of allocating about $60 million of IRA and infrastructure funds. And we're working with a lot of partners in this room to do that. And we're also thinking about doing a similar request for information where we can share this opportunity. But every single one of those regions also have infrastructure and IRA allocations separate from this 60+ million that I just talked about. So you need to be certainly talking to those regional liaisons, and if you don't know who they are, can make that information available to everybody in this room. But yeah, invite us to your PLSC meetings, and we'll make sure that we have a representative from this group every single time.
And we also have another meeting. In addition to the PLSC, we have the SLPC, which is the state. Yeah. But anyway, we're going to connect the dots.
There's enough of us to spread around.
But if we don't wrap this up and go to our Meryl, last words.
All right, so we'll follow up on the SLPC and PLSC, but really just celebrate, all the leadership up here and the previous panel and in this room. There's lots of amazing things to be done together, so we're excited to go forth and do that. And I think we're going straight into workshops. So maybe head wherever you were planning to go, head that way. But
and back here at 3:30.